I've got the opportunity today to talk with Bob Munger. Bob is down in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and we're going to talk about sumo. Now, we're not talking about the wrestlers, because, Bob, you don't look anything like a sumo wrestler.
You got that right.
But we're going to talk about sustainable urban mobility and your Carshare program down there. So, welcome to EV World.
Well, thank you, Bill. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. I'm a fan of your blog, I guess you call it, or your what do you call yourself? A magazine or?
Who knows what I call myself? Just don't call me late for dinner. So
Okay.
No, I appreciate that, but obviously we want to talk about what you're doing, not what I'm doing.
Sure.
So let's start off first of all by telling people what is sumo.
SUMO. Well, yeah, the name, interestingly enough, comes from, it's basically an acronym for Sustainable Urban Mobility. And we are a low-speed electric vehicle car sharing company, and we're pretty certain that we're the first in the Western Hemisphere to use low-speed EVs in a car sharing type organization. We are sort of founded on the basic belief that EVs are the future. Car sharing is a big part of the future, and low-speed EVs are a really nice fit for the urban environment, and particularly the walkable environment, which is sort of the where everybody seems to want to live these days. So, low-speed EVs are produced in the U.S. in great quantities, but they're typically visualized or used on the golf course, and
Right.
so they look kind of like golf cars and look a lot like golf cars. Let's face it. We're not really thrilled about that, but we're thrilled about the fact that the cars are already at scale. They've been proven. They've been around a long time. They work well. They have they don't have much maintenance to worry about. They're affordable. Which are some really nice things. Most of the EV industry has sort of started at the top, the Teslas and the whatnot, and they've tried to kind of innovate downwards, I guess, or sort of, and that's great. We think Tesla's great. They're fantastic cars. Everybody loves them, but they're expensive. And so we're at the very other end of the spectrum, and we think it's a nice place to sort of broadcast the EV, so to speak, to the common man, if you will.
Well, you're sort of actually kind of at a convergence of a number of different trends. I mean, you've identified them. I think, first of all, the concept of sharing, that is a shared economy, is becoming more and more what we're about. The disruptive, I've interviewed the gentleman that wrote the original study on the disruptive effect, or the anticipated disruptive effect, that low-speed electric vehicles are going to have as opposed to the Teslas of the world. And of course, this shift towards a more urban environment where, by 2050, 75, 80% of the world's population is going to be living in large cities.
Right.
And so you're actually kind of on the, if you will, the spear tip of what I see as a number of different trends coming together. Now, what's your background?
Well, I'm an architect.
Okay.
I have a degree in architecture, practiced architecture for about 25 years. I was also a construction program manager, and decided it was time to make a change. I wanted to do something different, and particularly when the economy got so tough for architects about 5 years ago. And kind of, I'd been very interested in sustainable design of buildings, and it seemed to me that the sustainable practice of transportation was really lagging, and that, particularly in the U.S., we have a problem with the whole concept of sustainable transportation. I think we're probably not we're the poster child of unsustainable transportation, I guess, in the world. When I was a young man in college, I had the opportunity to travel about Europe a good bit, and really fell in love with European cities and the way they're designed and the way they're walkable and the way that, just the whole concept of urban walkable environments to me is where I want to be, and I think increasingly where Americans want to be. And the low-speed EV is a great way to get around in these environments. You're part of the street in this car. With in a conventional car, you're not. You're really an object. You're an anonymous, machine going through an environment and you're not connected to what's going on in the street, whereas with a low-speed EV, you are connected. It's like you're on a bicycle almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, it makes a big difference.
Well, so you're located in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Why Fayetteville? I mean, I think originally, if I remember correctly, when we set up this connection, your Skype address had something to do with Augusta, which I assume is in Georgia. So why Fayetteville? Why not Atlanta?
Yeah. Well, maybe someday we'll be in Atlanta. Who knows? But Augusta is where I was at the time when I sort of had this desire to reinvent myself. And Augusta happens to be sort of the global capital of the golf industry.
Right.
Well, the low-speed EV industry, and of course, golfing is big there as well. So now I think that claim to fame has probably shifted to China now, because China produces a tremendous amount of low-speed EVs, and the low-speed EV industry is really growing by leaps and bounds there. But in Augusta, I founded a nonprofit called the Augusta Greenway Alliance, whose mission was smart growth and sustainable transportation, and was interested in really kind of focusing on low-speed EVs. And when I first came to Fayetteville, I was actually trying to sell the university here on a research center for low-speed EVs, and found some traction here. I'm actually a U of A grad, was born and raised in Little Rock, so it's home for me.
Okay.
In many ways. And when you're trying to do something revolutionary or radical or whatever, dealing with intellectual property, you better find a place where people will support you, particularly if you don't have unlimited wealth, which I certainly don't. So that's the reason why Fayetteville. Fayetteville's a nice place too. It's pretty progressive for the South, and it's not the best place in the world, but it's a great place to start and test it and see if it's a viable business.
Right. So I understand you have a co-founder in this. Give us a little bit of sort of the history of how the two of you came together and how this evolved.
Well, and that's a great point, because that was another big reason why Fayetteville is because I found a great business partner with Michael Lawley. Michael, who's lived in Fayetteville, he's also has a background in architecture, but he has been here for, 25 years at least, and whereas I haven't lived here in a long time, and so that's another reason Fayetteville was chosen, because I found Michael, and he's a very smart and savvy businessman, and he's been in Fayetteville, he's got connections, and so the two of us have found that we've invested the seed capital, and we've got 15 cars so far. And we're talking to some other markets about possibly expanding, although we really need to prove, the financial viability here,
right?
Or else we're going to have some financial help if we grow anywhere else. So that's kind of where we are now.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the operation. You got 15 cars.
Mm-hmm.
I gather that they can be reserved, I assume, on your phone or by computer, or walk us through that.
Either one, and so one thing that's unique about our telemetrics is that we use SMS as our platform. So what that enables us to do is utilize any cell phone to basically book, start, or stop the car.
Okay.
And so we probably will at some point have a conventional app for a smartphone that's probably a little bit more user friendly, a little quicker, but the advantage of what we're doing is that it creates the ability for the person with a basic flip phone to reserve and book and start and stop a car. So it's really a nice low cost way to go. Between the affordable cars and the affordable telecommunications, it's really a very economical way to utilize car sharing.
Okay, so these cars are they sort of parked in groups of like 3, or are they just sort of scattered around the Fayetteville community?
Yeah, they're scattered around in our pods, and our pods typically have a couple of cars.
Okay.
We have more pods than we have cars, because we're finding that it's easy. Pods are not as expensive as cars, and it's great to have a lot of places where somebody can go. I mean, you have to have a pod in order to sort of turn the car off and release your responsibility for it, both, financially and otherwise. So a pod basically is a point of discharge is the acronym there, but it's essentially an apartment complex, a grocery store, on campus, the library, places like that, and it works pretty well. So it's a one-way system like Cardigo does, and so you pick it up at any of our pods and drop it off at any of our pods, and you're only responsible for it while you're driving it. Now you don't have any monthly fees, so it's pay as you go.
Okay, so a pod would be what? Just several parking spots set aside at a grocery store, and there's a charger handy. I mean, who's sort of responsible for keeping the cars charged up?
Well, the members are, and obviously we're ultimately responsible as a company, but we do ask our members to do that, and we're sort of developing a culture of responsibility for that. Part of our membership agreement does spell that out, as you're responsible for doing that. Now we don't have any strict rules at this point to kick people out that don't do it. Although we certainly have that in our back pocket if we have to. I don't think. Most of our cars they go about 20 miles a day. They would go more if we have the hill. Fayetteville's hilly.
Oh, okay.
But 20 miles a day is enough. We don't need to go 30 or 40 miles a day, and we're operating in a fairly limited area, and most of our trips are a mile or two. And then if we get plugged in at half of those trips, we'll probably be fine. So
okay, well, tell us a little bit about. I mean, how many members do you have, and what's sort of the typical profile? Are these just college students or who?
Yeah, it's a mix, and we just launched about a month ago, so we're we've been beta testing for a while, but we ran into some regulatory issues with the State Motor Vehicle Commission and had to basically have our building headquarters finished before we could start taking in revenue, and that was sort of one of the bumps along the road that we've hit. But so we've got about 60 members so far.
Okay.
So we're starting slow, and we're hoping that it's going to catch on. The students are mostly on break now, and so August will be a big month for us as they start coming back to Fayetteville to go to school.
Okay. So some of these bumps that were in the road, what kind of, red tape did you run into? You walk up to the city council and say, I want to put 15 of these golf cars around the city, and
don't call them golf cars, Bill.
I know they're NEVs, they're low-speed electric vehicles, but most people think of them that way. That. So
but I do want to stress, and it's a big education thing that we have to do, that a low-speed vehicle is different from a golf car in many respects. It has four-wheel brakes, it has a DOT windshield, it has seat belts, turn signals, brake lights, headlamps,
windshield wiper,
roll bar, a lot of stuff. So it's and when you drive them, they kind of look like a golf car, but when you drive them, you say, "Wait, this is not a golf car." Right. It feels much better. But anyway, the city, it took some education for the city, but it didn't. The city has been pretty supportive, and we've been pleased and haven't had too much problem. We have a wonderful city council here that's very supportive, and the police have been great. Haven't had any problem with the police department. The university's been pretty good. So all in all, we've been very pleased.
Okay, so what's the typical charge to use? I don't want to use the term rent, but to use one of these then.
Sure. Well, so we are set up with a 5-minute increment. Every 5 minutes, you pay a little more.
Okay.
And 5 minutes is nothing. I know it sounds like, but when you're only driving a mile, in many cases, you pick up in one spot, you drive a mile, and you drop it off, and you can do that in less than 5 minutes, and sometimes. So, if a 5-minute trip is $1.50 if you're just a regular member. If you're a group member, it's about $1.35, I think, and then if you go 10 minutes, it's like $2.90 or $2.60, I think, and so It varies. And then, those 5-minute increments are set up so that they get the additional amount you pay gets a little less every time. So
Right.
it ranges anywhere from about 30 cents a minute to 9 cents a minute, depending on how long you have the car.
Right. Okay.